Hi everybody, welcome back to HighByte. I'm Tom, this is Zero to Pipeline, and today we're going to be talking about APIs. Now an API is a way that you can leverage Intelligence Hub as a connection to both your data systems, but also send that data not just written to other systems, but make it available for other systems to call and to interact with Intelligence Hub. So this is going to be how we're going to make the last connection and really stitch all of our stuff together, let you make the most of your data, and let your other tools make the most of your data. Let's get into it. All right, now I'm starting on the desktop today because to show you the most up-to-date version of this, I need to do an upgrade. So we'll show you that process. Here I've already downloaded the latest beta. I was using Intelligence Hub here where I was using 4.1.1, and I am going to use the 4.2.0 beta. So we'll have this open in a moment, but I'm going to go ahead here, extract this program that I downloaded from the HighByte website. It's going to open me up the 4.2. I'm just going to let that share a directory here, Intelligence Hub, with 4.1.1. Great. Don't need that anymore. Don't need that. Don't need that. And I'm going to open this up. Now, I want to make sure that I still have all the stuff that we built before. So I'm actually going to go back to my 4.1.1. I'm going to copy app data, head over to my 4.2.0, remove that app data, replace it with this one, and then when I go into runtime and start Windows, I'm going to say that's okay. I should have everything I need. We'll give this just a moment to start up. All right, and there it goes. So you can see we've already got some things activated, some starting, so we should be in a good spot. Let's go ahead and open up top one, and then it was 45245. Let's go ahead and open up Edge, and we're going to go to HTTP 127.0.0.1 45.45245. And here we are at the login. That's great. We'll go ahead and log in, and you can see there's all the connections we have. Not a whole ton of them, but there's all the pipelines we've made, our instances, our models, our users. So everything is here because I copied our app data directory over. All right. So what are we doing here? We are here for the API. Let's go into the settings to start out with. We got to turn it on. Now I'm going to scroll down to see REST data server. That's where our API is going to interact. And I've already got mine enabled, but if you see unenabled, you just click that slider on. And I'm not going to use HTTPS because I'm not going to worry about encryption at this point in certificates, excuse me. I'm going to leave hostname at zeros, just binds to every address here. I'm going to leave port at 8885. If you need to change that port, you can. It's just going to change what we use for our base URL. And then I'm also going to turn on allow anonymous and allow login authentication. Now, anonymous is going to let us read anything that doesn't require writing. It's going to let us do anything that is read-only without logging in or without providing authentication. And login is one of the authentication methods we're going to cover today. So that's great. That looks good. Let's save. And then let's go down here to this OpenAPI spec URI. I'm going to open this guy. And this is going to be a nice little interactive way that we get documentation from our system. So let's start with getting information about, let's list our connections. Now, remember, we had 3 connections, right? We had internal SQLite, internal MQTT, and a template CSV. So let's see what we get here. Let's break this down. Let's hit try it out. And let's press execute. Okay. So first, it's going to show us a curl statement that we could have used to get this instead of the interaction here. It's going to show us what we're connecting to. There's the endpoint. You can see there's HTTP 127.0.1.885. That's the port we configured. And then this extension, this relative URI, data v1 connections, data v1 connections, data v1 connections right there. And then we got a code 200. So that's a success. And this is what it gave back. It gave back an object with a key of connections and a value of an array of internal MQTT, internal SQLite, and template CSV. Those are our connections. That's great. And we didn't have to log in to get that because I said to allow anonymous connections. What else can we do here? We could get our outputs. That's not complicated. Let's look at our instances. Try it out. Execute. And we're going to see the instances that we've made so far. There we go. We got a 200. There's the instances that were returned. There's a curl statement you could have used to get this. And that's the endpoint that we hit. Okay. So when we're looking at this, we have get and post. Both of these can return something useful to us, but if we want to write anything, we'll use a post. And if we want to just read things, we'll get a get. So what might the difference between that be? Remember back, let's look at the connections, internal MQTT, inputs, and we made this arbitrary input, right? This arbitrary topic, because we wanted to set this up so that we could use this to just connect to whatever topic we wanted. So let's sort of interrogate that a little bit. Let's go look at our inputs. And you can see we can read a value from an input. I'm going to use this get here, so it's going to be fine to start with. And I'm going to read a value from the input of pump1, right? We're familiar with what that looks like. Kind of like this guy. There's pump1. Looks like that. We can read it in here. That's our pump1 data. So let's look at getting data from pump1. So I'll break this down. I'm going to say try it out. What was the connection name? That's one of the fields that we need for our API, connection name. And it was internal MQTT. Make sure I spell that right. And this is case sensitive. And then let's see. Our input name is the connection, no, the input, excuse me. So we got our connection there, and then our input is pump1, right? So connection is internal QTD, and then input is pump1. Whoops, excuse me. Pump1, great. And then I can execute that. Now I got a 200 code. That's the curl statement that we could have used. That's the endpoint that we're hitting. And then this is what is returned to me. Looks a lot, son of a biscuit. Looks a lot like this. Great. All right. So what's the difference here than here if I want to use this one? Well, in this case, if I hit try it out, you're going to see I'm going to get a body. Get requests don't have a body because essentially these can also just be used in a browser. Now, if I just took that, paste, I can get here, right? But my browser doesn't have any way to like send any more information. There are ways you can do that. So let me clean up a little bit here. I can also add onto my post requests a body. So let's do the same thing. Let's look at internal MQTT. And I might want to do this because I might need to actually hit not pump1 because there's no input really necessary here, but arbitrary topic. I've got this field here, right? I got a parameter for my topic. And in that case, I need to be able to tell it like, well, what is my topic supposed to be, right? We use this to grab arbitrary topics when we're doing parameterization in our pipeline. So in my API, I can say input name. So this one is, I've already forgotten. What was it called? Arbitrary topic. I had to make that long. Couldn't have had a nice A topic. Perfect. All right. And then down here in the body is where I'm going to send an object called parameters that holds, well, the parameters that I'm interested in. And I've only got one here. It's my topic. There we go. My topic. And what should we have this be? Let's do pump 2. So we'll do pumps. And we'll do good old basic pump 2. Pumps, pump 2. That'll be easy to type. So I'm going to go in here. I got pumps, pump 2. Right? So now I've sent that, and I can execute. And wouldn't you know it, this one didn't work. Remember I said anything that was read-only we could access anonymously, but we have not logged in. So we can't have this data because we are not allowed to write anything to Intelligence Hub. All right, so let's deal with that. How do we log in? Well, there's one way. Let's see, where is it? There we go, base, log in. This is a post. Now this one you're allowed to touch without having already logged in. If I drop this down, you can see I'm going to try it out. And I've got a username and a password, and it's going to go to DataV1 login. So I can remove the password, and my username is administrator. That's another reason you should change this. And if I execute this guy, I get a 200. That's what I sent, right? That's where I sent it. And I get this back. I get my access token of type bearer, right? So while I'm using, I'm going to copy that right now. While I'm using the OpenAPI interaction here, I'm going to show you how we do that. You can come up here, hit authorize, paste, authorize, and you're going to see all of these little locks are now secured. So this means we're logged in, or at least we're going to provide some login information. Now, we're also going to look at how that gets to be useful when we're creating things. We'll look at that curl statement. So let's go ahead. Which were we? Oh, yeah, we were looking at our inputs, right? So drop that down again. It's already here. Already trying it out. Let's execute now. Did it work? Heck yeah. All right, we got 200. So this worked. And we're reading that topic. We passed in the topic pumps, pump 2, and we got back our result of it. Now let's take a look at this. This is our curl. This is, we did a post request this time, so we're actually writing something. We were writing this object here under the D flag, right? And there's our topic that we wanted to connect to, pumps, pump 2. And now we've got this authorization header. These H flags are headers, and we've got this authorization header. And you can see it put the word bearer, and then there's the code that I put in. So this bearer token, and when I did this login, let me see if I can get back to it so I can point at it. When I did this login, I got back my bearer token. And this is basically the same as if I had just logged into Intelligence Hub with a username and password. This will time out at some point. Let me go back to the settings here and we can look at that. So it'll log out after 8 hours. That's going to expire. But until then, I can sort of carry on and use it. Now, that's great if I'm testing it or if I want something to log in occasionally. But what if I just want something to stay connected? Well, I have another option. I can go to my users, and this is why we looked at users last time. Go to my administrator, for instance, and my API keys, and I can make a new API key. And I'm going to call this Z2P, zero to pipeline. Demo for 0 to pipeline. Great. I'm going to hit create. I'm going to download this key, not because I'm really going to use it that much, but this is the only time this is exposed to me. So I can hit this little icon to copy it, and it should now be in my clipboard. So if you want to be able to reference this in the future, if you're going to set it up once and that's it, you know, this will be active indefinitely, but this is the only time you're going to see it unless you download it or save it somewhere secure. So be aware of that. All right, so I've copied that to my clipboard. I'm going to go back to Swagger, which is the system that holds our documentation. I'm going to go to authorize. I'm going to log out, and I'm going to paste this API key in here. Authorize and close. And let's go read. We don't need login. Let's read that input again. There it is. So you can see we had this sort of dashed hexadecimal code before as a bearer token. If I execute this, you can see I got another 200. That's good. I got another reading off of my system. And you can see our post used the same format, authorization, bearer, and then there's my API key. That works just the same. So the bearer token and the API key are interchangeable. And using the D flag or sort of putting the body of your message, you can put a parameters object that passes parameters in. Neat. Okay, so what else can I do with this? Well, one of the neat new things is that we can actually make callable pipelines or API pipelines. We can expose our pipelines as custom inputs, which means I can send a message in that body, giving it a body object in a post. I can send a message to a pipeline, send a payload into it, operate on that, or have it do something with that information, or just kick off a pipeline even, and then get some value back, or just use it to initiate something happening in the system. Right, so let's do that. Let's go ahead back to Intelligence Hub for a minute. Let's go to pipelines. Let's make a new pipeline, 0 call pipe. I hope that's not confusing. Callable pipeline demo for 0 to pipeline. Great. And I probably should not call it callable pipeline. There's a reason for that, and I'll show you in a second. API pipeline. Finish. All right. So now, if I go into my stages, into my triggers, I've got 2 different triggers. And I'm sorry I've been saying callable, because this makes any of your API triggers or any of these pipelines available and function very similarly, but like allow them to return values to other pipelines within Intelligence Hub. But what I really want is the API trigger. This is going to expose it as an API endpoint that we can call from outside of Intelligence Hub. So I'm going to grab that guy, throw it down in here, and I'm going to go and enable it. Save. Now, I can add parameters to this, and this will make these mandatory parameters. It'll be like, if you don't send these parameters, this pipeline is not going to run. But if I don't put anything in here, this is going to accept any kind of message. So I'm just going to leave that empty for the moment. We've got our API trigger. It's active. I'm going to do a write new. All I'm going to do is just whatever shows up here, internal MQTT, API pipe, is going to be logged to the topic API pipe. And then I'm going to add one more thing. If you come down to the control section, we've got return and error stages, right? And so remember when we were looking here at any of our requests, go back up to input, right? So I was saying we got a 200. That's good. So if we have a 200, or if we get to a return stage, we're going to give a 200 message back. If we, had done something wrong, how can I break this? Yeah, then we're going to 400, right? And it's just like this connection doesn't exist. So if I've got any error that happens in my pipeline, for instance, I can send back an error message, and maybe I've got like, let's see, some conditional thing, and then, maybe it'll error, or it could return a good value, right? So this is a way I can send back an error to my API. Make sure you have errors or returns on your useful endpoint, or on the end of your system, because you're going to want to make sure that whoever calls this pipeline, whoever hits this as an API endpoint, gets something, doesn't just get left hanging. So tie up your loose ends, use return and error. We're not going to use anything too complicated here. All I'm going to do is say write new and then return. So we'll save that. Here we go. We're looking good. Let's go back. Let's go down to pipelines. I can get a list of all the pipelines that can be called from the REST data server. So that's pretty neat. Let's go ahead and try that guy out. And you can see here I've got one of the things that this is how I send to the curl. This is the endpoint that we're going to. And here's a list of the pipelines that have an API trigger on them. This is a subpipe that we were working on before, but here is a 0 call pipe. That's the one we just created. Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and write a value to it. So we'll go back to try it out. So I see if I can 0 call pipe. That was right? 0 call pipe. Yep. All right. And then what do we put in the body? Honestly, it doesn't matter. Number. That's sort of bad juju to use uppercase. I'll use lowercase. 144. I like that number. And then message. Hi, Mom. Oh, hi, Mom. There we go. So we'll execute that. How'd we do? We got a 200. That's good. This is the post that we made. You can see post to this endpoint. And let's see, that's our authorization. And there's our body. This is where we sent it again. And this is what we got back. We got the same message back. Now, what does that mean? This is the same object that I sent it. Does that always happen? No, it doesn't. But let's remember, if I started a pipeline and I hit a write stage, I am going to write something. And in fact, there it is. That's what I wrote out. But it's also just going to sort of keep trucking down the pipe, right? So whatever message arrives at a return stage in event.value is going to be returned to the user or to the system that is called the API, right? So that is how I can deliver. I can have anything ask to initiate a process, do something with it, and then return a message in the API. So let's do that, right? Let's go ahead and cut this line here. Let's add a transform stage, and let's just see, what do I have for fun functions? Do I have anything good? Yeah, let's do word 7 or something like that. All right, so there's my pipeline. We'll just adjust this a little bit. Event.value.word equals word 7. Whoops, excuse me. There we go. Save. All right. Let's make sure did I do that right? Word. Yep. Okay. That should work. All right. So let's try that again. Let's execute. I'm sending the same message in. You can see there's the query. And now this is what I'm getting back. I'm getting my same message back, but I've also added this nonsense word to it, right? So you can use these writes to pipelines to set up kind of whatever your system needs. Maybe I just want to use one of these writes so that some other thing occasionally posts to it and uses it to kick off a process that doesn't give a value back at all, but just goes ahead and kicks off a complicated pipeline to do something else. Maybe it kicks off a complicated pipeline to go query some information and give it back to it. Maybe you don't really need a pipeline. You can just read our inputs or out and write to our outputs, do something like that. You've got a lot of options. But this should really open up the doors of like letting you connect your systems and make those connections automatic. So one of the other things that you might find useful for this is that Intelligence Hub can now connect to other Intelligence Hubs. If we go to pipelines, we can do, or sorry, let's go to connections. What's any of these not needed anymore? I don't want to overburden us with tabs. All right, so let's go to connections. Let's make a new connection. API, great. Next. And we actually call this our REST client, but we don't just support REST clients with this or REST connections with this. This is really for making HTTP or HTTP requests. So you can also use this for SOAP if you're interested in that. You get to do a little bit of overhead in scheduling tasks and handling asynchronous communication, but we can hit our REST client. And here we can put our base URL. So 127.0.0.1 885, nope, one more 8, 8885. Our headers, I don't really want to deal with the authorization one, but I guess we suppose bearer token. So we can make our authorization a little simpler. I could put it in the header, just like we were looking at here, right? So I could put authorization as our header and then bearer this. So all right, I'll go ahead and do it. I suppose that's what we're here for, is to learn and demonstrate. I don't need functions anymore. So I could do new header, authorization, and then this, right? Bearer, my API key. Doing this is the same thing as, let me go ahead and just grab that. Setting bearer token and then putting down my token here. So this makes it a little easier. But I can set other headers that maybe my other systems need to connect. And I can create this guy. Then I can make an input, which will go off in query and then keep using the message that is returned. So let me see. New input, name, same system. And then let's see, what endpoint do I want? That was, so this is going to give us our base URL up to here, and then I want, this is the endpoint listed, so I'm going to go ahead and grab /data all the way here to the end, and I'm going to remove all of those Fs. Put paste. Don't want any of these guys. Let's get rid of those. Good. And let's see. Now I could select my HTTP method here. We were looking at gets and posts, so there's our post. I can put a request body here. Oh goodness. Grab this from oops, I don't know what I just clicked there. I want this. Perfect. Copy. Man, Windows really getting in the way here. There we go. So we're going to try and get the pumps. And let's go ahead and create that. Test that input, and there you go. Now, you wouldn't really use an input back to your own local API, but I could have set this up for another Intelligence Hub's endpoint. And so that might have been a really simple way to do it. So yeah, we have looked at how to turn on the API data server. We have looked at how to interact with it a little bit using this dialog from Swagger Docs. I really recommend playing with this and sort of getting a feel for the things that you need to use. Certainly, you can use tools like Insomnia or Postman if that's more your speed. We looked at authorization using an bearer token and an API, and an API key for our users. And then we looked at creating a connection. Oh, I moved away from it. For a REST client or for an API, and getting some information back from it. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If you have other systems that can interact with APIs, I really encourage you to experiment and see if you can make them do something cool with Intelligence Hub. And I'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much for joining today. Hope you learned something about APIs or using them in Intelligence Hub, and I hope you can set them up with another system and do something cool. I will look for you in the future. Good luck.